Hey Therese,
Yes, Knut?
what's the difference between the band and the backing vocalists?
Really?
About a semitone.
Right, okay. Can we
Hey,
start?
hey Therese,
No!
how's a backing vocalist like a bathroom, Therese?
No! Just stop with this joking!
At this stage in the arranging process, you'll have distributed the melody and perhaps the bass line among the sections. However, this still leaves at least one section, if not more, without anything to do yet. So, let's have a look at your options. Like I mentioned in the previous video, if there are obvious or prominent backing parts in the original and you want to use them in your arrangements, then you should definitely keep them. However, this may not always be the case, and sometimes you'll deliberately want something that's different from the original. This could be, for example, if you're transforming the song, or if the backing parts won't translate well onto voices.
There are countless options when it comes to backing vocals, and this is probably why it can be difficult to know where to start with them. So let's look at a few tried and true backing vocal styles that you can use to give you some idea about what might suit your arrangement. We'll use the same song I've been using as an example up until now, Leave a Light On by Tom Walker. For simplicity's sake, we'll assume that it's completely a cappella for now. Also, I'm not going to go into which notes you should pick for the backing parts in this video, as this is largely circumstantial and will change from song to song. A good ear or some theoretical knowledge will help though. The first option you have is to use simple block harmonies sung on a single vowel, which creates something called a pad. These are useful for sections of a song where there is little movement, as they provide a simple harmonic background for the melody, and they don't tend to get in the way of the more important parts. They also sound good behind a more active supporting instrument, like a piano, so don't be afraid to use them with a backing track or an accompanist. Here's how it might sound in Leave a Light On.
If you look into the distance, there's a house upon the hill, guiding like a lighthouse. It's a place where you'll be safe to feel at rest, 'cause we will make mistakes. If you lost your way, then I will leave the light on.
While you can definitely use a pad sung on any vowel, oo and ah are naturally well suited for this, as they're rounded vowels that tend to blend voices well together. You could also use broader vowels like and e, of course, though they may require some extra work to get the blending right. Note that more open vowels like ah tend to come out louder than more closed vowels like oo. So a good rule of thumb is to use the more closed vowels in the lower and quieter range, and to use the more open ones in the higher and louder range. You don't have to do this, but it gives you more control over the natural loudness of the backing parts.
The next step is to use the same block harmonies and put some rhythm to them. This lets you introduce some movement to the backing parts, and you can make them as simple or intricate as you want. Also, if the original song has a prominent rhythmic feel, this is a good way to apply it to your arrangement without using percussion or beatboxing.
Just a phone call left unanswered had me sparking up. These cigarettes won't stop me wondering where you are. Don't let go. Keep a hold.
Note that, in this case, it helps to use a consonant in front of the vowel to emphasize the rhythmic nature of the backing parts. They're pretty much cliches of a cappella music, but the do and da syllables are very well suited for this, as you get the percussive attack of the plosive d consonant combined with the blend of a rounded vowel. Other consonants will change the sound of the backing parts and can reflect how percussive you want them to be. For example, the lu and la syllables are gentler than do and da because they use a liquid consonant, rather than a plosive consonant. Conversely, ku and ka and su and sa will have a harsher attack. You can experiment with these to find out which you prefer, but don't be afraid to fall back on the more common sounds, as they remain popular for a reason.
Another way of introducing movement to block harmonies is to make each section attack their note in sequence, producing something called an arpeggio. These usually go from low to high, or from high to low, but you can mix them up if you want to.
I will leave the light
While arpeggios can be simple in their execution, you still need to make sure that the individual sections can retain their grasp of the strong beats in the song. If one section is constantly singing offbeat notes, they may start rushing ahead or lagging behind. A simple way to alleviate this is to give them a strong beat in unison with a preceding section before moving to the offbeat, like so, as this will help to ground their rhythm.
The next option of arranging backing parts is a mainstay of choral music, the chorale style. Here, the sections are singing the same words and rhythms on different notes, producing a harmonized melody. This method can be used in pretty much any genre of music, and will generally sound great as long as the harmonies and voice leading are good.
If you look into the distance, there's a house upon the hill, guided like a lighthouse. There's a place where you'll be safe to feel like grace, 'cause we've all made mistakes. If you lost your way, then I will leave the light on.
In classical music, the melody in chorale harmonization is typically in the highest part, but it can really be placed anywhere, so long as the leading section is singing in a strong part of their range. For example, in gospel music, the melody is typically in the middle of 3 parts, and in barbershop music, it's usually in the second to highest of 4 parts. I particularly like to use chorale harmonization when arranging the choruses of songs, as having all the parts sing the same words in the same rhythm will cut across really well. But it can really be used in loads of different situations, and it's a strong and simple tool to fall back on if there doesn't appear to be a better way to arrange a particular part of a song.
The methods of arranging backing vocals that I've talked about thus far are all meant to be in the background and not intrude on the melody much. However, there are plenty of ways to create more prominent BVs, which interact with the melody in different ways. If the melody has clear gaps between phrases, this is a golden opportunity to add some call and response. This is when one section or the soloist makes a musical statement, or call, and the other part responds by either copying the initial call or singing something that embellishes it in some way. This is very commonly done in music, and may very well be the way you teach your arrangements to your choir if you teach by ear. Some examples are the chorus of Aretha Franklin's Respect, Beauty and the Beast from the eponymous film, and the last part of the chorus of Barbie Girl by Aqua. Here's an example of doing it with Leave a Light On.
Tell me what's been happening, what's been on your mind. Lately you've been searching for a darker place to hide. That's alright.
That's alright. Alright.
As I said earlier, call and response works well when there are clear gaps in the melody, as the backing parts can become more prominent when there's no main melody to draw the attention away from. It can also easily be used in conjunction with the other ways of arranging the backing vocals, as when the main melody is happening, you can use the other methods, and when it stops, the BVs can do their response and return to their supporting role when the main melody starts again. Remember, the response doesn't have to be melodic. you can simply have them do a rhythmic response using the same block harmonies that they may already be singing, and the introduction of words will be enough to create interest.
The last option we'll talk about today is a little more advanced, and this is counter melodies, or counterpoint as it's also called. This means that you have a secondary melody happening, usually at the same time as the main melody. This can be very exciting if done well, and a good counter melody will exist as an equally important part of the song as the main melody. In pop music, some good counterpoint can be found in the verses of I Want You Back by the Jackson 5, the chorus of Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, and in the last chorus of Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. Leave a Light On already has some counterpoint in the last chorus of the song.
I will leave the light on.
If you look into the distance, there's a
Creating a counter melody has its own unique set of considerations, as you're effectively introducing a potentially distracting element to the song. From the 16th century until about the middle of the 18th century, counterpoint was used very prominently in music, and some rules, or guidelines, about how to make the music sound as balanced as possible were developed. Having some knowledge of these guidelines can make it easier to make an effective counter melody, though they were invented in a different time for a different audience, with ears used to different sounding music than ours, so some of them might not work as well with today's music. Still, it's useful to have in mind when adding counterpoint to a song, and I'll talk about this topic in greater detail in a later episode.
And there you have it. I hope that seeing different ways of arranging backing vocals has been useful for you, and that you might have some ideas for your arrangement. Big thanks to Therese, Marit, Jeremy and Ollie for singing, and to Tom, my cameraman, who you can't see. As always, leave me any comments if you have some questions, and I'll see you next time. But before then, I have some more funny backing vocal jokes. Oh, come on, that's great. Come on, how many backing vocalists do you need to screw in a light bulb?
La